My name is Patricia Aufderhiede, and I am a university professor at American University in Washington, D.C., and I run the Center for Social Media there. I think the question of how to measure success generally is always bedeviling once you leave the mass media environment and those crappy Nielsen ratings, which are bogus in the first place. But first of all, I would recommend to you looking at a study we did called Spreading the Zing. I'm not sure that was the best title, but it is the title, Spreading the Zing, and it's on our website, centerforsocialmedia.org, and it provides you with 5 different measures that you would be using in analyzing the success of any project that was, whose goal was audience engagement or user engagement in some way. I think interactive documentary, the goal is always to establish activity on the part of the viewer. But they won't even get there if they don't access your stuff. If you're working purely in a digital environment, you have some really great tools, analytic tools provided by Google and by YouTube, which allow you to measure how many people come, more or less where they're coming from, and how long they stay, and which part of what you're doing they were most interested in. And so that's a very helpful measure. But I also would not like to slight qualitative measures, which often are slighted as anecdote. But actually garnering qualitative measures of having people tell you what kind of impact your work had is also very important. You know, I actually think that this whole area is bleeding edge. I think there's a lot of cute experiments, but I cannot point to you one thing that in interactive where I go, that's a home run. I have not seen that yet. You might have. But I do think that the NFB digital documentary site is a good place to go shopping for that stuff. I really admire the work of Kat Zizek. She is really enormously creative at being fearlessly at that bleeding edge, and her work in high rise is extremely interesting. And one of the things that I appreciate about Kat Zizek's work is that she really understands that the primary goal is for users to interact in a way that allows them to have agency in the world. That's the point of everything she does. It's not to play around with the technology. It's not to get the numbers. It's not simply to have interactivity. It's so that people's experience of interactivity can change their understanding of what is possible for them to do in the world. And I think the work of Tommy Pallotta is also very interesting that way. He did that work Collapsus, which involves people in multiple ways in the issue of climate change. One example of interactive media that is actually proven to be very interesting is docSHIFT, which is merely a combination of geolocation and mission, and can involve putting up media as well. But it has been used around the globe in crisis situations to map activity and allows people to participate in that activity. So I think you've got a lot of media that move far away from documentary and video. And that can be a little bit alarming for people whose primary goal is to try to figure out what, how they can apply this to their documentary and video. I think that the most successful thinking in interactivity is freed from any one medium and one mode of expression, and is linked consistently to the mission or the goal of what's supposed to be communicated. I don't think broadcasting is going to be redundant for a very long time. I think broadcasting is currently the place where it's the place where almost all the money is generated for documentary filmmakers, at least in the United States. Digital platforms are really spare change at this point in terms of, and the big rising source of income is video on demand. And of course, DVDs continue to be very important. So these are very traditional mass media modes of communication. I do think that there's, it's unclear how broadcast spectrum is going to be used productively in the future, and what happens to a lot of local stations. The business models for a purely digital environment are unstable, but it looks like what we're looking at in the United States is a coalescing of several large gatekeeper organizations which will probably control the environment and the options to monetize. One of them is iTunes. iTunes is the single most important platform by far. By far. There is no other platform on which people are showing up that they're getting more than pennies. iTunes is actually providing some steady revenue. iTunes is an extremely rigid company to work with. All of their deals are preset, they're non-negotiable, and the terms under which they will provide things to people are non-negotiable, and they are determined to be the central platform for all information, text, audio, video, everything, in this digital environment, and the safe place to monetize it. There are other companies that are also setting the terms for the emerging environment: Google, Amazon, and in music, Ticketmaster, which controls PR, venues, and promotion for almost all commercial music that occurs above the level of a garage band. So we have been walking around in a very, very confusing, decentralized, and unmonetized environment. We are moving towards a more monetizable environment that we will not control. Tough to say how we'll feel about that, but most of it will happen without our direct input. I think that we have to look at reality at the moment and say, my most monetizable venues are the most traditional ones at the moment. And that's why I think that a lot of the most exciting work is really happening at the bleeding edge. There are people doing amazing stuff. Mozilla Foundation is funding very, very exciting experiments, and they are looking all over the world. The Mozilla Journalism Project, which is called Mojo, is funding, it's looking for people doing exciting video and other projects to give them year-long fellowships to work with journalistic organizations. And that's just one of their many exciting projects. So we're gradually developing tools that lower the cost and lower the workload involved in producing digitally on the open source, as well as in that cloud environment that is controlled by the very large providers. That is going to be another thing that will very much upset many traditional documentary filmmakers, because even more people are flooding into that space. At the same time, I think that the ability to tell stories powerfully and beautifully will be a submarket that will be really important. The people currently doing webisodes in the United States in conjunction with typically corporations in branded entertainment are very professional filmmakers who understand how to work, how to make beautiful things happen in a highly circumscribed environment.